Happy Thursday, January 2nd, 2020. I almost said 2019. It's Cordell Glass here. Reading the Bible is vital. Today we're going to take time out to read and discuss a little bit of 1 Kings chapter 2. Yesterday, if you missed the video, go back and check it out from 1 Kings chapter 1. Today I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. Before I jump into that, just in case you're wondering what's up with this blanket back here, this is a blanket I got from a mission trip to Nairobi, Kenya at the beginning of last decade. Had the opportunity to go there with Crossfire International, great ministry led by a good friend and mentor of mine, Joe Dewhurst, who's currently living in El Salvador with his family doing ministry down there. But the tribe, the Maasai tribe, which is tribe in the Kenyan area, actually made this blanket right here. So it's a reminder to me of just some of the journeys that God has allowed me to go on. And when I look at it, it actually reminds me to pray. So thank God for that. So today we're going to get into 1 Kings chapter 2. And it starts out subtitled, if you will, David's final instruction to Solomon. As the time of King David's death approached, he gave his charge to his son Solomon. I am going where everyone on earth must someday go. He's talking about to the place of the dead. And that in some translations will actually say the word Sheol here. Take courage and be a man. Observe the requirements of the Lord your God and follow all his ways. Keep the decrees, commands, regulations, and laws written in the law of Moses so that you will be successful in all you do and wherever you go. If you do this, then the Lord will keep the promise he made to me. He told me, if your descendants live as they should and follow me faithfully with all their heart and soul, one of them will always sit on the throne of Israel. I thought this was very significant. I love the fact that King David took the time to share these words with Solomon. I think this is a charge that whether we're on our deathbed or not, if we're fathers or even mothers, but especially fathers like myself, I have a 5-year-old son and a daughter who's almost 2 and plenty of godchildren. It's really important to me to, especially for the young men that I'm raising, is for them to understand the need to take courage and be a man. Although life can be pretty scary sometimes. There's some decisions you have to make. And even when you're scared, you got to take a step forward and do what you got to do. That's having courage and being a man. It says, observe the requirements of the Lord your God and follow all his ways, not some of his ways, but all of his ways. And of course, today we're no longer under the law of Moses, but there are many statutes. There's many decrees, commands, regulations that we can look into as principles that can guide our lives as New Testament believers, as New Covenant believers. We're no longer bound to 600 and some odd laws that they were bound by in these days. But nevertheless, there is a requirement, there is a standard that God has for us. And if we live according to that, if we seek to have the character of Christ, we're not going to have to worry about a lot of the craziness that goes on. Life has enough craziness in and of itself, but we don't have to create more of it because we just make bad decisions and disobey, dismiss wise instruction and wise counsel. All right. So I thought this was really cool too, that King David had made mention here that God's promise to him was that, as long as they would follow him and serve him, his descendants, as long as they would follow God faithfully, they would sit on the throne of Israel. And I believe it's in the same as that, similar anyhow, that when we raise up our children and remind them of the importance of living godly lives, importance of putting into practice the right things, the righteous things, the biblical things that we would instill in them, and that they would walk out and live out those things, then they will have success in life. They will, in a sense, always be enthroned. They'll always be on the throne. They won't be dethroned. They will feel like kings and queens. God calls us in First Peter, he calls us a royal priesthood. I believe it's First Peter, maybe Second Peter, but nevertheless, in the Word of God and in the New Testament, we're called a royal priesthood. And in order to be that royal priesthood, it's to understand that God has called us to live in such a way that we see ourselves as royalty. And royalty doesn't just do anything, doesn't just go anywhere, doesn't just let anything spew out of our mouths. We live with a level of dignity that would always remind us that we're part of a kingdom that's greater than ourselves. Amen. And there is something else. This is verse 5. You know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me when he murdered my two army commanders, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He pretended that it was an act of war, but it was done in a time of peace, staining his belt and sandals with innocent blood. Do with him what you think best, but don't let him grow old and go to his grave in peace. All right. Be kind to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead. Make them permanent guests at your table, for they took care of me when I fled from your brother Absalom. So this is kind of a repeat of the character, the kind of behavior that King David had. King David, he did very well to remember the good, the bad, and the ugly that had been done to him as it pertained to the establishment of his kingdom, as well as now here at throughout his kingdom, and now here at the end of his kingdom. He's taken great note of the people that have done him right and the people that have done him wrong. As you may recall, back in 2 Samuel, if you read that, you know that Mephibosheth, which was the crippled son of Jonathan, who was the grandson of King Saul, and Jonathan, the son of Jonathan, whom Jonathan was King David's pretty much best friend. And because of the relationship that he had with Jonathan, and even the level of honor and respect he had for King Saul as being God's anointed, at one point, he made sure that that Mephibosheth had a place at the table of the Lord, of the king, if you will, permanent place, due to that relationship, due to his loyalty to his friend Jonathan. And so in the same, you see that in King David's final wishes, he's making it known to King Solomon, hey man, please treat these people with the utmost respect and honor because of how they treated your father in my time of need. And then also he's dealing with Joab here. Joab, I'm sure, thought that he was off the hook. In 2 Samuel, when Joab killed Abner and killed Amasa, it seemed as if it wasn't a big deal, really. King David didn't make a big fuss of it, and so Joab probably thought that he got away with murder. But how many of you know that the king doesn't forget anything? It doesn't just go under his nose. He realizes when things are being done right and when things are being wrong. And when I say king, I mean I'm talking about the King of Kings right now and the Lord of Lords. He sees it all. He knows whether we're doing people right. He knows whether we're doing people wrong. And we have to be mindful of that in every action that we make, that we take. And thank God that, he has grace and mercy on us, and we may not get punished or we may not feel the hard consequences of every bad decision we've made. But that's not something we want to play with. The Bible even talks about that God's not mocked. And so there's decisions that we ought to steer clear from, just knowing that it's possible for us to have to experience God's judgment. We may not experience it now on this earth, but trust and believe, we all are going to have to face judgment. And for those of us that don't live our lives according to God's will and God's way, trust and believe we're going to not be easily taken off the hook in the way that we may think we have here on earth. Because a lot of people are doing horrible things throughout this world, and they probably don't. Well, some just write God off altogether as if he doesn't exist, and as if somehow that's going to erase consequences. Just because you don't believe in gravity doesn't mean that if you jump off a building, your butt ain't gonna fall flat on your face. There's things that are just in place as God's ability is to judge right from wrong. He gives the opportunity for us to choose right and wrong, and in a sense, we're choosing our fate. So we need to be very, very careful about the decisions that we're making. All right, let me get off of that. And remember, Shimei, son of Gera, the man from Bahurim in Benjamin, he cursed me with a terrible curse as I was fleeing to Mahanaim. Boy, these words are crazy. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan River, I swore by the Lord that I would not kill him. But that oath does not make him innocent. You are a wise man, and you will know how to arrange a bloody death for him. Wow. Then David died and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. David had reigned over Israel for 40 years, 7 of them in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. Solomon became king and sat on the throne of David, his father, and his kingdom was firmly established. Solomon establishes his rule. One day, Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, came to see Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. Have you come with peaceful intentions? She asked him. Yes, he said, I come in peace. In fact, I have a favor to ask of you. What is it? She asked. He replied, as you know, the kingdom was rightfully mine. All Israel wanted me to be the next king, but the tables were turned and the kingdom went to my brother instead, for that is the way the Lord wanted it. And indeed, it was the way the Lord wanted it. So now I have just one favor to ask of you. Please don't turn me down. What is it? She asked. He replied, speak to King Solomon on my behalf, for I know he will do anything you request. Ask him to let me marry Abishag, the girl from Shunem, the Shunammite. This was the lady, the young lady in the beginning of the last chapter, in chapter 1, that was summoned or commissioned, if you will, to lay at the feet of King David to keep him warm. And she wasn't intimate with him, so on and so forth. So I'm really curious to see what happens with this Abishag girl. So verse 18 says, all right, Bathsheba replied, I will speak to the king for you. So Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak on Adonijah's behalf. The king rose from his throne to meet her, and he bowed down before her. When he sat down on his throne again, the king ordered that a throne be brought for his mother, and she sat at his right hand. This is dope. You see, King Solomon, he rose from his throne to meet his mother, and he bowed down before her. What a sign of honor. This is how it should be with our parents. We should definitely honor our parents, because easily, I mean, Bathsheba could have bowed at his feet, because after all, he was the king. But because of his level of honor and respect for his mother, he wasn't waiting or expecting her to bow down at his feet. If it wasn't for her, he wouldn't be birthed, and he wouldn't have had the opportunity to be the son of King David, and for him to be able to be in position to take the throne as king. And honestly, in the first chapter, if it hadn't been for Prophet Nathan as well as Bathsheba to remind King David of his promise for King Solomon to sit on the throne as the next king, who knows if it would have even become a thing. Who knows? King Solomon probably would have never even been taken and placed on the mule and rode into Jerusalem as the proclaimed king by King David's men. So yeah, I don't know if that would have happened or not. So the role in which his mother has played in his life, clearly King Solomon hadn't forgotten that, and he honors his mother here because of that. So it says here, the king ordered that a throne be brought for his mother, and she sat at his right hand. I have one small request to make of you, she said. I hope you won't turn me down. What is it, my mother? He asked. You know I won't refuse you. Then let your brother Adonijah marry Abishag, the girl from Shunem, she replied. How can you possibly ask me to give Abishag to Adonijah? King Solomon demanded. You might as well ask me to give him the kingdom. You know that he is my older brother and that he has Abiathar the priest and Joab son of Zeruiah on his side. Then King Solomon made a vow before the Lord. May God strike me and even kill me if Adonijah has not sealed his fate with this request. Yikes. The Lord has confirmed me and placed me on the throne of my father David. He has established my dynasty as he promised. So surely as the Lord lives, Adonijah will die this very day. So King Solomon ordered Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, to execute him, and Adonijah was put to death. Wow. So he had his own brother executed. I don't know if this is the right move, but obviously this infuriated King Solomon because in his mind, I guess he thought, listen, dude, maybe you would have got the Shunammite woman to be your wife had you not tried to self-proclaim as king instead of me in the first place. This Shunammite woman, as I guess King Solomon saw it, was she belongs to a righteous man. She belongs to a king. So I'm assuming perhaps King Solomon's probably going to end up taking Abishag as one of his wives. That's probably what's going to end up happening as we read further into this book of First Kings. But man, he infuriated. I just imagine if Adonijah never made this request, his life would have probably been spared. He probably would have never been killed. But it was just the icing. It was just the icing on the cake. King Solomon had enough. He was being gracious enough to his brother. But for him to make that request, that was enough to tick him off. So verse 26 says, Then the king said to Abiathar, the priest, Go back to your home in Anathoth. You deserve to die, but I will not kill you now because you carried the ark of the Lord, of the sovereign Lord for David, my father, and you shared all his hardships. So that was very nice of him. So Solomon deposed Abiathar from his position as priest of the Lord, thereby fulfilling the prophecy the Lord had given at Shiloh concerning the descendants of Eli. So obviously Abiathar was one of the descendants of Eli, and in First Samuel, it was told to Eli, who was I guess like the godfather, if you will, of Samuel. He because of the way in which he dealt with his sons, he was he didn't discipline his family very well as they were cutting up. They were supposed to be handling God's business in the temple, but they were acting a fool, doing whatever they wanted to do, taking money, doing what they wanted to do with it, taking women, doing what they wanted to do with them. It was just a lot of chaos in the house of God. And because of that, Eli was stripped of his priesthood, and his family was going to pay for that. And Abiathar obviously was part of that lineage. So verse 28, Joab had not joined Absalom's earlier rebellion, but he had joined Adonijah's rebellion. So when Joab heard about Adonijah's death, he ran to the sacred tent of the Lord and grabbed onto the horns of the altar. He knew he was next. And it's interesting. I didn't address this in yesterday's video concerning grabbing the horns of the altar. in First Kings chapter 1, I believe it was Adonijah who grabbed the horns of the altar um, when he found out that King Solomon had been proclaimed the king. He went and grabbed the horns of the altar, and this whole piece about the horns of the altar, if you go back and look at it, I believe I want to say it's Exodus. I want to say it's Exodus chapter 29. Matter of fact, let me go there real quick. Exodus chapter 29. I'm pretty sure that's where it is. Yes, the dedication of the priest. If you go back and read Exodus chapter 29, you'll learn about the dedication of the priest and the horns. They were to sprinkle blood on the horns. They were to smear blood on the horns of the altar. It says, put some, in verse 12, put some of its blood on the horns of the altar with your finger and pour out the rest at the base of the altar. This was putting the priesthood in place. Aaron and his sons were being ordained as priests in the house of God in the temple. And this was to represent holiness, being set apart, a place of sacrifice. They would make these sacrifices on a daily basis unto the Lord, and God's presence would be with them in doing so. And so it's kind of like this, the horns of the altar, them grabbing the horns of the altar in their time of trouble was kind of like a place of asylum, kind of like a home base. Like when you're playing tag, once you make it a home base, no one can touch you. You can't be out. And so this is what happened with Adonijah in First Kings chapter 1. And again, this is the idea that Joab had as he ran to the sacred tent of the Lord and grabbed onto the horns of the altar. He thought he was safe from any harm. He thought that his life would be spared by doing so. But verse 29 says, when this was reported to King Solomon, he sent Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, to execute him. Benaiah went to the sacred tent of the Lord and said to Joab, the king orders you to come out. So he didn't kill him right there. But Joab answered, no, I will die here. So Benaiah returned to the king and told him what Joab had said. Do as he said. The king replied, kill him there beside the altar and bury him. This will remove the guilt of Joab's senseless murders from me and from my father's family. The Lord will repay him for the murders of the two men who were more righteous and better than he. For my father knew nothing about the deaths of Abner, son of Ner, commander of the army of Israel, and of Amasa, son of Jether, commander of the army of Judah. May their blood be on Joab and his descendants forever, and may the Lord grant peace forever to David, his descendants, his dynasty, and his throne. So Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, returned to the sacred tent and killed Joab, and he was buried at his home in the wilderness. Then the king appointed Benaiah to command the army in place of Joab, and he instilled Zadok, the priest, to take the place of Abiathar. The king then sent for Shimei and told him, build a house here in Jerusalem and live there. But don't step outside the city to go anywhere else. On the day you so much as cross the Kidron Valley, you will surely die, and your blood will be on your own head. Shimei replied, your sentence is fair. I will do whatever my lord the king commands. So Shimei lived in Jerusalem for a long time. But 3 years later, two of Shimei's slaves ran away to King Achish, son of Maacah of Gath. When Shimei learned where they were, he saddled his donkey and went to Gath to search for them. When he found them, he brought them back to Jerusalem. He gonna learn today. Solomon heard that Shimei had left Jerusalem and had gone to Gath in return. So the king sent for Shimei and demanded, didn't I make you swear by the Lord and warn you not to go anywhere else, or you would surely die? And you replied, the sentence is fair. I will do as you say. Then why haven't you kept your oath to the Lord and obeyed my command? The king also said to Shimei, you certainly remember all the wicked things you did to my father David. May the Lord now bring that evil on your head. But may I, King Solomon, receive the Lord's blessings, and may one of David's descendants always sit on his throne in the presence of the Lord. Then at the king's command, Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, took Shimei outside and killed him. So the kingdom was now firmly in Solomon's grip. Wow. So Benaiah, man, this guy right here, he was like the executor. He was the man when it came to shedding blood righteously. There you have it. There's more establishment of King Solomon's grip. His kingdom is being established here in the second chapter of First Kings. It's the wishes of his father, King David, concerning these men that thought they were getting away with murder, that thought they were getting away with their disloyalty. It came to bite them in their butt. They had been dealt with. And so a lot of the bad blood, man, had been removed. And it's like that sometimes when you take a place of position, or you're a successor, if you will. You got to remove certain people need to be removed from places of authority in order to have a clean slate. I'm not saying that the call and the answer is to take people's lives, but sometimes when you're establishing something new, old blood has to be removed. Let's say you're becoming the new captain or new coach on a basketball team or a football team or what have you. You may have to remove certain individuals from places of authority on the team that thought that they were the team captains. They may need to be demoted to bring new, fresh blood on the team, people that are going to have a better attitude. Maybe you're starting a company or you're taking over a company. You might have to replace some of the the managers or supervisors that have been in place prior, in order to bring in people that are going to make better judgment, that are going to be more loyal to the company, more loyal to you. If you're in a position of ministry, and you're needing to rehash or reestablish some order in your ministry, in your church, you may have to have some hard talks with people and remove them from certain positions that perhaps they may have been once anointed for, or maybe they weren't anointed for it, but nevertheless their character is not lining up with the call and position, and you have to put some other people in place that are going to better be suited for that position, that are going to be a more harmonious team to walk alongside you. That might have to happen, and tough choices have to be made when you're in places of leadership, especially when you're in a new position of leadership. People may not like you. People may have ideas of how they can usurp your authority, or to remove you from authority altogether. And so whatever that may be, just seek God for wisdom, seek counsel from individuals that God has placed in your life that you can trust to give you sound wisdom, sound advice. And let's keep growing, guys. That's First Kings chapter 2. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, please subscribe, tell a friend, share this video on your social media platforms, send it in a text message. However, to just get the word of God out, we're going to do plenty of these videos until the Lord says otherwise. And many of these videos are going to be us just reading scripture and kind of walking through, talking about some practical things that we can apply to our lives, helping us to better understand the text so that we can rightly divide the word of truth, and continue to equip a generation that needs the word more than ever before, because reading the Bible is vital. God bless.